When we added MDMA,
What will you do?
went up to 61%.
Hell yes.
But I saw a bird that morning. He made the first blues in 200 years.
Samantha Chisholm Hatfield wa amnashi. She Tututni, she Chinook, she Salagi. Hello, my name is Samantha Chisholm Hatfield. I am a Doctor of Science in Environmental Science. I am Chinook and Tututni from the Confederated Tribes of Siletz, and I am also Cherokee. I am so honored to be here. Thank you for coming. So I want you to come with me on my journey, because oftentimes Native stories are often thought of as children's fables, or Disney, or Pocahontas. Pocahontas is the most famous one, but our stories are relevant and often occur right amongst you, and you don't know that you're living and breathing and walking on a Native territory with Native people right by your side. Because of the stereotypes that are portrayed in media, we often are thought of as being ancient, in buckskin. We walk around with leather and headdresses if you watch things that are very commonly portrayed in mainstream media. But that's not how we live at all. So I'm going to tell you my story today and why I do what I do. As I said, I'm a Native doctor. I'm a doctor, and I'm a scientist, and I'm Native. And I'm a woman. That's kind of beside the point. But it's a long journey for me, and it has been a long journey for me. It's ongoing. So I'm going to take you on this ride. I'm going to take you on my path. I'm going to bring you into my canoe, okay? So I grew up here in the Willamette Valley. I grew up in a traditional home. We did things like we knew how to fish, we knew how to hunt, we worked the land. We knew from the time that I was born, I was taught how to read the environment. Not everybody knows that. I can tell you what's coming when the clouds are a certain way. I can tell you what's going to happen when the weather changes. I can watch the animals and tell you what's coming in the next couple days. Many people are really confounded by that, but it's really basic science. And what it is indigenous science. There are two kinds of traditional knowledge. One is a traditional knowledge that encompasses everything. They are stories. It's knowledge that is based in a traditional foundation of culture. And every indigenous culture has this. You don't have to look very far for this. It is stories that are traditional, information that is passed down. It can be familial stories. Our great-great-great-grandfather did this, he went that way, that's and such. The Chisholm in my name comes from the Jesse Chisholm of the Chisholm Trail. I'm a direct granddaughter of Jesse Chisholm, of his second marriage. So we grew up with that traditional story. My grandmother used to tell me stories about Grandpa. And for me, it was very normal until I hit about 20 and found out there are museums with our name, and there's an actor that portrays my grandfather. It was kind of surreal. It was like, wait, what? That's not at all what Grandma said. But those kind of stories are very grounded in a traditional knowledge. Traditional ecological knowledge is taking some of that traditional knowledge and applying it. It's the utilization of indigenous science based from traditional knowledge. So these things are very vital when indigenous people apply their knowledge in the ways that they need to sustain and maintain their culture. So when I started my college degree, I didn't have any problem with it. I was like, okay, we're going to do this, right? I started encountering problems when I started applying my TEK and my traditional knowledge. I grew up knowing who I was and where I come from. I had a fabulous childhood. I grew up on the river. We are Tututni people. Tututni means people of the river. We come from the river and the ocean. We are ocean-bearing, seafaring tribes along the northwest here. So for me, that was normal. I didn't have any problem with it. I thought, okay, This is how it goes, right? No. When I started working to apply my knowledge after the basic classes, I was met with challenge. And not just challenge of work harder and get through it, challenge with you can't do this, okay? So, some of the things that helped work me through that was my past. When my father was young, his father passed away when he was 3. He was a logger and a tree fell on him. So as per traditional custom, he went to live with his grandparents after that. His mother worked and remarried, and I didn't know my paternal grandparents because of the tragedy that happened. When my grandmother, they lived in Siletz, by the way. Now, Siletz is a checkerboard reservation. Traditionally, historically, the government gave us the entire West Coast because we were rounded up. We are a Confederated tribe of multiple tribes. And so from the Columbia River down into Northern California over to the mountain range in Oregon were our traditional homelands. So the government said, well, because there's so many of you, we'll designate the west side your reservation, which was great for a little while. And then it dwindled. So the town of Siletz is not a reservation like people think of reservations. It's a town. It's an incorporated town that was opened for settlement. So many Native people live there, but also many non-Native people live there as well. So I have many stories like this that help to support me. One day when my grandmother decided to go to Newport, which is 15, 20 miles away, for groceries, she left. It was an all-day trip. She returned home to the house in Siletz. My father was playing with neighbors and staying over there while she went to the store, because my dad really likes to go to the store. Apparently it's ingrained in his DNA. My mom won't let him go to the store with her either now. So it's a traditional story that's an offshoot. Anyway, when my grandmother returned home, she returned home to a burning cross in the yard. Not a small one, a large one. There had been other instances of this, but again, it was the most devastating. They put it out, they dismantled it, they got rid of it, they thought it would be okay. They lived in a way that was good with other Native people. This was not new, unfortunately. Many of the Native people had to cross into the Willamette Valley over the mountain range to come and work. They were migrant workers in the fields, and that's how, when settlement happened, many Native people didn't understand how to pay taxes. And so they lost their homesteads, they lost their places that they lived, and all of those stories remain, but the places do not. When I was doing my research, I frequently heard, oh, from that tree right there to this bush that's now there that used to be a sequoia tree, that was all so-and-so's place. Or we hunted from that tree line to this meadow, and that was all our families. So frequently, geographic boundaries and identifying markers are still in place. So my grandparents came over to the Willamette Valley to work. When the hop season was done, they went back because hops were big. It was a good money-making venture. They went back about 2 weeks later. My grandfather was a dancer. He had a headdress of eagle feathers. And the story goes that the eagle feathers touched the ground. The headdress was so long. Now, a headdress you might have seen on Victoria's Secret. Those are the fake ones. I know of 2 women, and I could be wrong, there could be more, but women are generally not granted headdresses. So every feather in a headdress is earned. And that's not by like Boy Scout earning. That's like some major feat, a major feat. Now think about the hardest time in your life and multiply that by 12 or 15. Doing that over and over and getting that headdress that drops to the ground. That's what my grandfather did. So my family were dancers, and we were very proud of that. And my father retells the story about how our family danced. So we went back, they went back to the Willamette Valley, picked hops, came back home, and their house was burned. This was after the cross in the yard. The trunk full of our regalia was gone. Our family pictures, gone. I was the first person to dance in my family again. Regalia is usually passed down from generation to generation and holds who we are. We walk on the shoulders of our ancestors underneath us. They support us. Their bones support who we are. And we always remember where we stand. So dancing is a big part of our life, and stories like that propelled me. And I always had them. I didn't know what to do with them. Everybody has them, but everybody processes them in a different way. And they're not just stories. Stories can entertain, but they can also teach. In Native culture, we have here in the Northwest what is called talking story time. And talking story time occurs in the winter, and it only occurs when it's dark. Hence, the fire and the darkness. Ours happened in longhouses. We don't have teepees. Teepees are not our thing here in the Pacific Northwest. Longhouses with fires. So I'm really grateful for the fire. This is awesome. So sharing these stories with you is an honor, because most people have no idea what being Native is or what it means. And I'm very proud to bring these stories and share them with you. I hope you reach out to the tribes around you and the people around you and learn more, because I know that there are others that are willing to share their stories with you too. So when I was moving forward with my degree, like I said, I had these challenges and I had these stories, and they seemed to not intersect. And I couldn't figure out what I was supposed to do with them. You know, I tried passing, and I passed very well, sometimes. But I couldn't figure it out. One of the stories that is frequently told in my family is about how we are river people, how I am a water baby. And my mom will tell the story very differently than my dad tells the story. She tells it with much disdain. It still causes great distress for her. My dad is a traditional hunter and fisherman and has been for years. And when I was really young, I would beg to go with my dad. When we were in the summertime, we would go out to the river and we would spend days at the river. We'd pack up at night and go home, and then early in the morning we'd repack the cooler and go and have picnics and just hang out at the river. At one point, I think my dad had 5 boats. So the river was a big place for us. So when I was young, I would beg, "Mom, please let me go, please let me go." No, no, no. So this one winter, it was steelhead season. He was going salmon fishing, and it was in the winter. I think it was January, actually. And my mom finally relented, finally. And my dad said, "Come on, let's go." He was always really good about it, but I, being the water child that I am, was playing down in the rocks, watching the fish, watching the water, watching everything as I'd been taught. I was learning the environment. I was reading my environment, but I was also playing. Apparently, in one fell swoop, I don't remember it, I fell in, the current was taking me away, and my dad reached down, managed to grab my hair, thank God I had long hair, and pulled me out. And I remember him telling my mom, "She's not going for a few years yet." My mom still stresses when she tells that, And my dad kind of laughs, and my mom kind of glares at him. But that's the epitome of who I am. I probably, if it happened today, I probably wouldn't be fazed by it as well. It just happens. I am a water child. I am a woman of the water. So my name is Uchandan Cheeyu. So it means woman of good place who is beautiful. Sacred woman of good place who is beautiful, I apologize. My name in Korean means look here. She is the place where 10,000 flowers grow. And those two coincide. And those are really important because naming does not happen just haphazardly. It happens with a story beforehand. So my names tell you who I am and how I live. These things will never be taken away from me, and they will be only my names forevermore. Everybody has their own unique name. So back to being a scientist, I have all of these different compartments. I had absolutely no idea what was going on with them. Where am I going? What is it? This seems to be, there's no fluency through this. There's no, what's going on? It doesn't make sense. So one day I had lunch with my dear friend who's our cultural director, and he was telling me about a renovation project in an area that was traditional that they found bones at. And everybody knew they were Siletz native bones, people from the Siletz. They went to the tribe, the agency, the government went to the tribe, and they said, look, we found these bones. Sorry. So the tribe tried to get them back. The tribe tried to halt the renovation until we could excavate and bring the artifacts to the tribe and look at them, because there's a process in taking care of them. But they refused. And I said, why? If everybody knows this is our encampment place, this is a traditional place that we go, why? And he said, because we have nothing. They claim it's only stories. Oh my gosh, my blood ran white hot. I can't even tell you how mad I was. Everybody knows these stories. Everybody knows they're true. But if there's not a written document, they're invalid. So I went home that night, and I was having dinner with my parents, and my dad had been at a meeting with a government agency, and they had been talking about deer. Now, I let you know that my dad is a traditional hunter and fisherman, and he's very good at what he does. And sometimes he is invited to these meetings that no one else is invited to, and he gets to talk about what he knows and TEK, essentially, before it was called TEK, and before the agencies acknowledged it. So he told them, they were very concerned. This was, at least a decade ago. And they said, we're really concerned about these deer. These deer are freezing. They're losing their hair. We can't figure it out. And my dad and several other hunters that were master hunters came, and they were telling them. My dad said, look, it's a bug. The bug is chewing on the lice, or the deer, and these deer are freezing. And they said, come on. So the other hunter said, from here to here, and from this tree line to this meadow, and from this ridge line to this ridge line, and they were documenting geographic areas where they had seen this occurring in the deer. The agency discounted them completely. About a decade later, they came out with hair loss syndrome, deer hair loss syndrome, and it's from a foreign louse. It's lice on the deer that is perpetuated by climate change. The warmer it gets, this louse thrives, eats on the deer's hair, and the deer freeze, essentially. So what these traditional hunters knew years before was accurate. So he was telling me this. And I said, well, why didn't they listen to you? And he said, because nobody's found it. No scientist has said This is what it is. So those were the two stories that propelled my career forward. This was it. I was done. We had a wealth of stories that came behind us, and I knew all of those were linked. I just didn't see how. So when I got into my end of my doctorate, I had primarily non-Indigenous professors. And time again, I was told, you can't do this. You can't do this. And I said, what do you mean I can't do this? This is impossible. Nobody's done this. Nobody's done this before. What are you talking about? Nobody's done this. I said, everybody does this. One of my mentors and a very, very, very dear family friend is Charles Wilkinson. And I don't know if those of you who know him know he's just a brilliant and insightful man. He and I had a conversation when I began my writing, and he said, I would put things down and I would erase it. I'd put paragraphs down and then I'd erase it. And he'd say, what are you putting down? And I said, well, Charles, this is really ridiculous. Everybody knows this. And he said, Sam, not everybody. No. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, this is knowledge that you know. You have specialization that needs to be shared. These stories are yours that they have told you to share. Another very dear friend told me, this is your walk. All of these stories, these people who have been silenced up until now, you carry their voices. Be the voice for our people. That's why I do what I do. I was one of the first two to graduate with a doctorate specializing in traditional ecological knowledge from Oregon State University. And I am so honored. Thank you so much. I am so honored that Oregon State University honors Native voice. That's an amazing thing. So from here on out, any story that you hear, keep in mind that it's not just a story. That default that we put it into, that categorization in our mind of Disney or children's fable, is inaccurate. A story can convey more information than just entertainment. Thank you so much for having me. I am so honored to be here. Thank you for the staff and all of the wonderful people here. Thank you.